Look, Mom, I'm coding.
Hi, so it's Marcel Kwame again here from Keep It Simple Stupid, KwameKiss.com. And I think about 10 minutes ago I said that I would probably end up going to sleep, but you know what? I am going to go ahead and do another walkthrough. Yes, I know I should probably sleep. It's 3 o'clock in the morning, but the good thing is it's Friday and I get to sleep in tomorrow morning. Or this morning rather. So what I'm going to do here is going to create a virtual machine and yeah. So I'm going to create an Azure. I'm going to create a Azure VM. I'm going to create a storage account. I'm going to create a network security group, NSG. Pretty much firewall stuff. I'm going to create a public IP address that can be used for, take a guess, load balancing. I'm going to create and configure a virtual machine, and then we will validate everything that we do. So this is actually going to be the longer one. Just a little bit longer than the other ones, maybe like 35 minutes or so. So I'm gonna just do it that way. Let me, so this is from the old one. Let me open up something new here. Great. So if we, let me see what I have when I do location, what's gonna happen. All right, so the variables are still stuck in there, so I don't have to find the variables again. So obviously, the two variables that we'll be using a lot is location and resource group name. The location variable is there and the resource group name is there. No need to define it. Cool. So the first step that we're going to take here is actually we've already created a resource group, so there's no need. We're gonna create a storage account. Okay, so create a Azure RM storage account, and so what we want to do is make sure that we have a unique storage account name. So that's the first step, really. Verify unique. If that's even a word. Storage account. So I believe it's get Azure RM storage account name availability. There we go. So name availability. There we go. I made a mistake in typing it. And name, and the unique name will be something like IAS, PS, the same. I think I'm just going to stick with the same PS1 lab, and then 1. We'll just and call it storage. Okay, so that's the first thing we're going to do, and I'll go ahead and see if that's not taken. So okay, so I've got to put all of these together because it doesn't like those. Okay, so we'll do that. True. So the name is available. Awesome. So obviously the storage account name has to be between 3 and 4 characters, and it must be a mix of, it can be a mix of numbers and letters. So now that we've identified this name, what I'm going to do is create a storage account variable. I'm going to create the variable first, and we'll do storage account equals that. Okay. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create so this is going to be locally redundant storage, and it's going to be standard. So that's a storage type. So here we're going to just create a storage account, and it's going to be new Azure RM storage account. The resource group name will be resource group name, and the location will be location, and the name will be storage account, and the type is going to be standard locally redundant storage. Now, obviously I made that longer than I did before. I don't think I'll be using backticks anymore because it just takes a lot of time. I'll just go ahead and just knock it out like this, just to save some time, because I think this is a longer, because what I plan on doing here is a little bit longer than usual. So this is gonna take a minute or two. It'll execute, and then it'll let me know whether or not it's complete and it's done executing. Awesome. So it's done. So we have storage account name in this resource group, right? And it succeeded. And enable HTTPS traffic only is off, and then here's the context. That's the object. So yeah, so everything's done with a storage account. So woohoo, we did that. Right, so that wasn't hard. That was pretty painless. So the next thing we're going to do is create a network security group, which is another really fancy word for firewall. Network security group, or NSG as it's known. And so we're going to create an array that includes the rules. And what we'll do is we'll create a network security group that pretty much controls access to the virtual machine, obviously a firewall. And we are going to allow port 3389 for RDP, which is remote desktop access, or the protocol for that. So that's what we're going to do first. And obviously, if you're familiar with firewalls, you can open the ports that you need. Obviously, we don't want to allow all the traffic into the VMs. Obviously, just the traffic for remote desktop access. Cool. So first up, we're going to create a variable called rules. And it's an array, so that's the parameter. That's the okay. It's for an array. Actually, I almost made a mistake there. So we have new Azure RM network security group rule config, I believe it is. Will it complete it for me? No. New Azure RM network security group rule config. Let's hope that this works. Name will be RDP. And actually I lied when I said I wouldn't be using backticks, because what's going to happen is it's just going to flow. So I'm going to do as much as I can. Protocol is going to be TCP, and the source port range, we're going to leave that open. The destination port range is going to be 3389. And obviously, if you want tighter security, depending on what kind of machine you have, you can modify these rules according to your needs. But for this one, I'm just gonna, not the best, but so destination address prefix. Ay, Dios mío. All right. And then access allow, and the description remote desktop. Access. Let's do that instead. Actually, you know what? I might be able to fit it all here. Priority is 100, and direction is inbound. Okay, so normal firewall rules that you'd see within any organization. So what we're going to do here is we're going to assign this variable. What's a variable? Okay. Yeah. So now, obviously, this is just one element in the array. You obviously can throw in other rules, you know, TCP protocol name, HTTP, source port range, wildcard, destination port range, 80, destination address prefix, access allowed, description, remote desktop, you know, HTTP, priority, you know, direction inbound. Like, you can go ahead and, you know, do all of that. You know, open up SSH if you know, anything that needs to be done can be. Okay. So that's that. Oh, I highlighted this for a reason, huh? So let's go ahead and go in and run that. So I've come up with an issue. That is, the term new Azure RM network security group rule config is not recognized. So no, it's network security, I believe. So let's change that. And actually, if I tab out, it should, okay, so that was it. It's network security. All right, so now if we take, oh la la, c'est pas possible, hein? Okay, now if we do that, okay, there we go. So that's the first element in the array, and that's RDP, remote desktop access, TCP, blah, blah, we did that. Great. So now what we want to do next is we're going to create actually network security rules. This is not the network security group. This is the network security rules configuration variable. And to creating an array comes in handy, obviously. So now this is create a network security group, right? Group. Drop that down. So now we're going to create a variable network security group. Okay, let's call it network security grow, whatever. New Azure RM network security group, and the name will be website NSG, something like that. And the resource group name is resource group name, and location, is location, and the security rules. Now this is where we see that it kind of pipes that in for us, right? So we're feeding that into, we created a little array, an object that it's going to take in. Okay, so that's going to go, and we're gonna figure. Actually, did it go? Did I click it? Hold on. Sorry, I stepped away for a second. Ooh, so what does it say here? Required security rule parameters are missing for security rule with ID. So there's something wrong with my security rule. So, oh no, okay. So, yeah, I didn't do a source address prefix, and that's what it's telling me right here. So it says and it tells you the security rule must specify either source address prefixes or source address prefix. So here, source port range, so we'll do source address prefix, and that will be a wildcard. Okay. And now we're going to let all of that run so that we can fix it. Okay. And that's going to take a few minutes. So go grab yourself a cup of coffee. It doesn't take too long. Let's step away for one quick second here. And it's all set. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So with everything executing so beautifully. We had a couple of glitches, but you know, nothing that we couldn't handle. At least nothing that I couldn't handle. Sometimes there are things that I can't handle. Great. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a public IP address. Then we're going to configure and create a VM, which will be the next step. So the public IP address. Okay, so give us a blank slate here. So create a public IP. So we just do VNet equals get Azure RM virtual network. And then we know these switches, resource group name, which is resource group name, and name is going to be I don't know, VNet name, actually. That's what we called it. So there are a couple of parameters that we set, and I'm going to double check. Okay, so there was a parameter called VNet set already, I believe. So do we want to overwrite that? Well, yeah, it's fine. It is getting the VNet via name. This is just, yeah, it's fine. It's the same thing. Not a big deal. I'm pretty much doing the same thing. So now we've got the same thing. See, there's just another way to do it. I mean, it was already set in there. We're just setting it again. Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to test the availability or the uniqueness of the DNS name for our web application. So in order to do that, test availability of DNS name for web application. Okay, in order to do that, we'll use this commandlet, test Azure RM DNS availability, and we call domain qualified. This might be a new qualified name. We'll try. So we'll call it IaaS. I did not mean to do that. I just created a region. IaaS. What was it? PS1, right? Lab 1 web. Just do something like that. And location, it's going to be location. Now, if this screws up, then we know why, because of this switch right here. but let's test it out, see what happens. Okay, so it's fine. So it's telling us that we can use it. It's perfectly fine. So what we want to do is we want to set a variable for the DNS name now. So DNS will be equal to this bad boy. Okay. Okay. And to verify, we can do one of these things. And perfect. We've set that parameter. So now what we want to do is create the public IP address. Actually, this is create a variable for the virtual network. Create a public IP address variable. So we're going to call it IP name. It's equal to website VM public IP, whatever. And then now public, create a public IP, and now that'll be IP Pubo, pub IP is going to be new Azure RM public, I think public IP address, there we go. Name is going to be IP name, and resource group name is resource group name, and location is location, and allocation method is going to be dynamic. It's not a switch. And the domain name label. So now this is where we actually do domain name label and DNS name. Okay. So these are the this is what you need to create a public IP. So we're going to set that variable. We didn't set this variable, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna run that. We're gonna see what will happen. And that should take just a few minutes. So notice that we set the allocation method to dynamic. And now static IP addresses, to my knowledge, are they are only, I believe they're only supported with load balancers. So when you attach your IP address to a load balancer, then that's when you can use a static IP address. So keep that in mind. Perfect, it worked. All right, so chill. All right, so now what we're going to do is we need to create a network interface that will be attached to this IP. So when we call an IP, we know which piece of hardware we're going to pass this data along to. So piece of beautiful, beautiful hardware. So let's create first. I like creating variables first. Let's create a NIC variable. And that will be NIC name or something like that, right? Equals website VM NIC. Okay, and NIC will be equal to new. Okay, so now we're creating a NIC. New Azure RM network interface. Network interface. So name is equal to NIC name. Resource group name is equal to resource group name. Location. Location is equal to location. Subnet. Subnet ID. So what we do with the subnet ID is, so we created the VNet, right? The VNet variable. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that subnet's parameter, okay, out of the VNet variable, which is here, right here, okay? And we are going to take the first ID that's available, and then that's what we're going to use to attach it to this NIC. So essentially, it's really funny. The NIC there would be two NICs. Because you have an inside NIC and an outside NIC, right? Because you're taking the subnet and you're also attaching a public IP address. So essentially we're creating two NICs here, which I never really thought about that, but now that I'm like up at this time of night or morning, then I do think about things like that. So subnets, we're going to take the first one that's available within the array, and .id, and public IP address ID is going to be pub IP dot ID, and the network security group ID is going to be network security group dot ID. Okay. So we created a network security group. We created a public IP, created a VNet, and we basically said for it to assign the first the apps, right? Because within the subnet, this is the first element in this array, and the second element is the data. So it's assigning the apps. And if we didn't want it to be apps and it was data related, it would be 1 instead. All right, so what are we going to do? We're going to execute this. And I really hope, because that was a lot of typing, you know, more typing, more chance to, that's why you should always do this thing in iteration. Imagine if I type this whole thing out and, oh, it works. Imagine if I typed the whole thing out and then ran it, you know, I'd probably come up with a couple of problems, more problems than one, right? So here we have the network interface for website VM NIC. So the private IP address is 10.0.1.4, which is in the, you know, that's actually the first IP address that they assign. I don't know what they do with the .1, 2, and 3, but it always starts at .4. So just it's one fact about Microsoft Azure and the assigning of IP addresses. And yeah, so that's done. We've created a NIC, but that NIC, which logically, a NIC is usually assigned to machine, right? You can't just create a NIC and have no machine. In the real world, that really doesn't work out too well. You usually have a machine, and then if you're going to put a module in the machine, then you kind of have your NIC that you get and you put it in your machine. But in Azure, you can do things however you want to do it. If you want to create your NIC first and that tickles you, then you do it. But yeah, so the next part of this, and I'm going to add that, I'm going to, put this in the thing, but the next part of this is configuring the VM. We're configuring and creating a VM. So first things first, we will create an availability set. So I'm going to create an AV set, and we're going to call it AV set equals new Azure RM availability set, and resource group name is going to be resource group name, and the name of this is going to be website AV set, right? Or yeah, just do website AV set, and the location is going to be location. Okay, let us go ahead and execute that so that we, all right, cool. So we're all set with that. Now, now we're gonna configure the VM. So we're gonna give the VM variable. Getting sloppy here, sorry. So VM name is going to be website VM1. Okay. the VM size. So the instance size is going to be standard. We're going to choose D1. Okay. And we're going to do so just do VM config is equal to new Azure VM Azure RM VM config, and VM name is VM name, and the VM size will be VM size, and the availability set ID will be AV set ID. Okay, so let's run that and see what happens. So, okay, VM config. Okay, cool. So now the next step is we're going to attach this VM to the network interface. I'm going to scroll down here, the NIC card. Okay, so VM config. We add Azure RM network interface. Azure RM VM, I believe it is. VM. See if it's that. Yeah, VM network interface. Okay. So, and you have to set the ID, and that ID is going to be the NIC ID. Okay. So let's run that, see if we're okay there. Perfecto. Okay. So, I need to see my spaces. Let me see. Yeah, it doesn't. Whatever. It doesn't. I'm a little OCD about some things. Okay, so next we're going to define a variable to, so we have a storage account, and we are going to use the storage account for the VHDs, which I think Azure uses VHDs instead of VHDXs. It's kind of interesting. But anyway, so we're going to kind of make some definitions so that the storage account, the variable can be set to hold, I guess, the URL for the storage account, and it'll be used for the full files of the VHD. I'm going to clean up my workspace a little bit here. There we go. So we're going to say the variable for storage account URLs for VHD file paths. Yeah, something like that, right? So the storage account and let's get Azure RM storage account, which I think it's there already, but we'll just do it the right way because it's not always going to be there when you because I never logged out, so all of this information is there. Adios mío. Okay, let's do that. Right. Okay. All right. So now what we have, let's create a blob endpoint equals storage account, and I believe that should be primary. Yeah. You know, this helps you, which is not good. And then I know it's toString. Yeah. Okay. That helps you. It's not supposed to. You're like, you've got your IntelliSense in there, and IntelliSense probably won't be present when you're, definitely won't be present when you're doing the exam. So yeah, so there we go. Storage account, primary endpoints, .blob, .toString, and I'm going to put all of this together. It doesn't need to be separated. And now we're going to attach this to, no, we're going to attach additional storage to the virtual machine. And then we're going to provide, I think the URI or something like that, where it's going to be created. So, cool. So we're going to do data disk. So attach additional storage to the VM. So here we have data disk, name equals web VM. I don't know why I keep creating these regions. Should not be doing that. Web VM1 data disk 1. Okay, web VM1 data disk 1 and data disk URI will be blob endpoint plus VHDs. Yeah, VHDs. And / plus just name plus the .phd. Okay, so what we did was, this is the URI where the data disks will be located. So, I mean, when you're looking for one, that's where you can go. That's where you should point to. So, VM config add Azure Azure RM VM data disk name will be data disk 1, and the VHD URI will be data disk test URI. No caching. And disk size in gigabytes will be okay. So stopped at the blob endpoint. So I should have done this one by one. So I'm going to do it one by one just because I want to make sure that, okay, so that will be fine. Okay. Okay. So now, we're going to set the credentials for the set user credentials and for the VM. So it's cred. I'm just going to put get cred get credential message will be enter admin credentials and VM set config, set Azure RM VM operating system Windows, the computer name will be the VM name, and the credential will be cred, and provision the VM agent. Okay, so what we did here is we're going to be prompted to enter our credentials. Okay, that's what that script is, right? So admin is, you can't use admin, I know that. I have a little hiccup here. Nope. Telling me that the argument is null or empty, but that's not true. Oh, it sure is, because I didn't do that, because sometimes I'm silly. sometimes I'm just silly, right? Okay, so mistake got fixed. Okay, so now we're going to we're gonna machine image here and publisher name. We're gonna set publisher name is equal to Microsoft Windows Server. My offer name, I hope this works, because Windows Server. The last time I did this, it really screwed up. Q name will be, so we're gonna go with 2016 data center, right? And that's going to be in the VM config, and we're going to pipe that in. Set Azure RM VM source image, publisher name will be publish name, author will be name, SKUs will be SKU name, and version will be the latest. So it's going to pick the latest from the list. So the last time I did this, I really had a really hard time. So I am going to and if it doesn't work, what happened? So I had a little bit of, I guess I had a couple of issues yesterday evening. I was really tired anyway, so troubleshooting it was, I guess I felt like it was my cue to go to bed. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning or something like that. But yeah, so I had a couple of issues with spinning up a VM. It's an ongoing issue that I've had with my Azure, and it was a really, really simple fix, and that was deploying all of my resources, pretty much creating that whole RM container in a completely different location. So I was able to do that. I fixed up my script, and everything works. So I do have a couple of VMs here. So I'm going to kind of start where we left off. I do have a couple of VMs here, and maybe I can get Azure RM VM. Let's see what can I? Okay, so I have one VM here. It's called website VM1. That's the one that we deployed, and I changed the location from East US 2 to East US because I was having a really hard time with just kind of figuring out the East US 2. I think the East US 2 is strictly for Active Directory, Azure Active Directory. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's the whole reason why I deployed resources in that region in the first place. But I think even in the portal it works. So it might just be like a really weird thing that happens with PowerShell. But long story short, I fixed up my script, changed the location in one area, which I think it was here. I changed the location to East US, and just kind of went through and did everything again from scratch. So get Azure RM resource group, you'll be able to see that I have this resource group that's located in East US, and this was kind of like my my test resource group, I think. Lab 1 is the one that I'm using. So with that said, that really pretty much finishes up the video here in regards to all of the stuff that we did. We created a network security group. Gosh, I feel like it's been such a long time. We created a network security group. We attached some NICs to this VM. We created 2 subnets, app subnet, data subnet. We created 1 VM. We put a Windows Server operating system or that image in there. We created some blob storage. We attached some OS disks and just some hard disks to the VM. 2 different disks sitting in the blob storage. What else did we do? We played around with a couple of the housekeeping stuff that you do in the beginning of deploying different resources within your different containers in Azure Resource Manager. And what else did we do? I think that's it. I talked about the storage account. I talked about the network security group. We checked out the DNS. We tested the availability of the DNS. We created a public IP address. Like I said, just kind of thinking from a networking standpoint, usually if one machine has 2 IP addresses and you usually have and also an internal IP address, you would have an inside NIC and an outside NIC. Just kind of think it's pretty interesting that just kind of software defined networking, right? So you just assign 1 NIC to this machine, and voila, you have everything that it takes. And going through with the NICs, you go ahead and you assign the subnet according to which subnet the machine is going to be in. So this is a web subnet, a web machine. So it sits in the apps subnet, which is the first element in the subnet array. So it assigned an IP address based on that. I guess for like natting and stuff, it attaches the public IP address to the NIC and everything, just so that things can go smoothly. And you attach the VM to the NIC. So yeah, and then we did the VHDs. We got the credentials for the VM, assigned the image. So everything worked. I think we were looking at a lot of red yesterday evening. I slept on it. I woke up and it was just obviously a really quick fix because I'm gonna do another video here on something completely different. And I needed to figure out how to fix that because I was really going to need to deal with the PowerShell stuff for this particular video for the VM. So any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Like I said, I don't feel like I'm qualified enough to answer questions, but I love study buddies. So you're welcome to reach out to me on Twitter. Marcella Epila is my handle. That's MarcelaEpila. My LinkedIn, my username is Kwame, Kouame. And my email is m@kwamekiss.com. So that's KOUAME kiss.com, where the blog is located. All of these scripts are going to be up on the blog somewhere. And I'll also maybe create like something in GitHub, create like a PS1 file in there where you can just kind of download it and do your thing. So yeah, we're rock stars. We're going to rock out on this exam. This is for, I guess, preparation for the 70-533. Again, Marcelle Kwame from Kwame Kiss, and peace and love.
Look, Mom, I'm coding.